we are looking at question two of free response assignment 1. And in question 2, we don't need to draw any graphs, but I'm going to use them to explain the answers. Your answers can just be written answers. So we have country Y that is experiencing inflation. And we want to look at how this is going to impact a lender and a borrower. So the lender in this case is a family that is depositing money into a savings account in a bank. So they're actually lending money to the bank at a fixed interest rate. And we have a business that is repaying a long-term loan at a fixed interest rate. So this business is a borrower. So this inflation is going to hurt one and help the other. And how does that work? Well, I've got a little table that I made over here. Let me switch this back. I'm going to change this to, no, it's good. I think, let's see, -199. Yeah. So what happens here is that we just think about a really simple scenario where, and let's first take the family, and let's say this family deposits $100 into a savings in a bank. And they're going to earn over the year an annual yearly interest of 5%. So at the end of the year, they should be able to draw out or have in the savings account $105. Now, let's say or assume that during that year, the economy experienced 6% inflation. So the real interest rate is actually -1 because we subtract the rate of inflation from the nominal interest rate. So the real, what this family is really going to get back at the end of the year is less in value, in real value, than they originally deposited. Because when we look at the real interest rate of -1, we can see that the buying power, what this $105 will buy, is exactly what $99 bought at the beginning of the year. So that they've actually lost 1% in buying power or real value as a result of this rate of inflation. Now the borrower, the business that's got this long-term loan, let's just say for the sake of keeping this simple, that they borrowed $100 and the long term is a year, and they're going to have to pay back at the end of the year. They're going to have to pay back $105 because the nominal interest on their loan was 5%. Well, if the economy experienced 6% in inflation, the actual real interest rate on the money they're paying back is negative. So the real value here of the $105 that they're paying back on their loan is less the real value, or the buying power of what they're having to pay back is actually 1% less than what they originally borrowed. And that's why the borrower is helped by a high rate of inflation, higher than the nominal interest rate. Okay. Or even if it isn't higher, they're always helped, because let's just say, let's say that if this was a zero, if inflation was a zero, then the real interest rate would be 5, right? But even if it was only 1%, that would lower the real interest rate. So any rate of inflation at all is going to help the borrower and hurt the lender. Okay. Now let's go back to part B. We want to identify one fiscal policy action that could be implemented to reduce the inflation. So when we go back to the graph we looked at on question 1. Let's jump back. And when we're talking about inflation, we're really saying that the economy is too hot. The economy is overheated, and it's operating maybe somewhere beyond its potential up here. So if let me just draw a line here. Show you. So if the economy was operating here, which would mean that the aggregate demand would actually shift way out. A lot of demand, high employment, a lot of people buying things, a lot of times on credit even, using their credit cards a lot, going on vacations, or all of these things. The economy is really, buzzing along. This would drive, obviously you would see that this would drive price levels up, and that is what inflation is. So we're up here somewhere. So what what a fiscal policy is designed to do, and I can't really draw it, but let's just try. The aggregate demand curve is, move out of the way. It's like right here, right? And I'm just going to draw a real, actually something like that, right? They want to shift it back, right? They want to shift it back. Okay, let me undo my sloppy writing here. But so it's here, and they want to shift it. So in order to drive this back, they're either going to cut spending of the government. This is fiscal policy, FISCAL, fiscal policy. They're either going to cut spending or they're going to raise taxes. Those are the two possible actions that the government can take in terms of fiscal policy, and that's designed to drive the aggregate demand to the left. If you raise the taxes, it means people are going to consume less because they have to pay more taxes, and if you cut spending, that's going to cut right into, it could be cutting the programs, it could be cutting jobs, that's going to drive the aggregate demand to the left. Okay, so that's fiscal policy, fiscal. Now, we want to identify an open market operation. Now, this is monetary policy that could be implemented to reduce inflation. So the open market operations would be either the Federal Reserve Bank either buying bonds or selling bonds. So a government bond. So when they want to cool down the economy, they want to make it smaller, they want to contract the economy, the Federal Reserve wants to take money out of the money supply. They want to shrink the money supply. They do that by selling bonds. They want to sell bonds. Because when they sell bonds, banks pay for the bonds with money. So that takes money out of the money supply. So that has the result of that, selling government bonds would reduce bank reserves and reduce the money supply. So that would look like this shift right here. It would shift the money supply back to the left, which would drive the cost of money or the interest rate up. Now, what happens when the interest rates go up? Well, if you're a young person out there using your credit card to buy things, and you get your bill and you see that the interest rate is substantially higher, and you're not able to pay off the balance, you've got to pay it over time, then your bill goes way up, and you decide, I need to cut back on this. So consumers tend to consume less, especially when they're buying on credit, when the interest rates go up. And investors, now here's the thing to understand, when businesses make an investment, either in a new project, a new building, new hiring, many times they use debt financing. In other words, they borrow the money to invest. And when interest rates go up, they're less likely to want to borrow money to invest in expansion, in new hiring, in building more stores, things like that. So the investment also drops as a result of this higher interest rate. And all of this is designed, once again, to shift the aggregate demand back to the left in lower price levels, because the whole point here is the lower price levels. So when money comes out of the money supply, driving interest rates up, and I can do an up arrow here, I guess. Let me do that real quick. Driving interest rates up, right? Whoops, not that one. I want an arrow. Let me try that again. That one, right? Okay. And we don't need that one. Okay, so we're actually driving interest rates up. And when that happens, that's going to push, I can't get that again. There you go. And when that happens, that's going to push the aggregate demand down and to the left. Hopefully, the point or the goal is to drive price levels back down and drive down inflation. Okay? So that's what would happen. Now that's question 2, parts A, B, and C. I'm going to come back on the next video and talk about parts D and E of question 2. Okay.